Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to our Hanafi fiqh class. We are doing the kitab known as I'ala Sunan of Maulana Zafar Ahmad Thanvi rahimahullah. And tonight, inshallah ta'ala, we are continuing on from page 274 from hadith number 229. We were still dealing with the chapter regarding used water, and it's the fact that it is pure but not a purifier. So with that being said, let us begin. Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. So we're reading hadith number 229 عن عبد الله الصنابحي رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إذا توضأ العبد فمضمض خرجت الخطايا من فيه فإذا استنثر خرجت الخطايا من أنفه فإذا غسل وجهه خرجت الخطايا من وجهه. الحديث بطوله رواه مالك والنسائي وابن ماجه والحاكم وقال صحيح الإسناد ولا علة له. قلت وقد مر الحديث بتمامه في باب إفراد المضمضة عن الاستنشاق. So this hadith is reported by Hadrat Abdullah as-Sunabihi radiyallahu anhu, who said that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that when a slave of Allah makes wudu, then فَمَضْمَضَ, he rinses his mouth, خَرَجَتِ الْخَطَايَا مِنْ فِيهِ, his sins come out of his mouth. فَإِذَا اسْتَنْثَرَ, when he blows the water out of his nose, خَرَجَتِ الْخَطَايَا مِنْ أَنْفِهِ, the sins leave his nose. فَإِذَا غَسَلَ وَجْهَهُ خَرَجَتِ الْخَطَايَا مِنْ وَجْهِهِ, when he washes his face, the sins fall off from his face. We did a lengthy hadith, and the hadith actually goes on further than this. With every drop of water, the sin comes out and all that sort of stuff. So he says, Imam Malik, Imam Nasai, Imam Ibn Majah, Imam Hakim, rahimahumullah, all report this hadith, and the chain of narration is authentic. And Maulana Zafar Ahmad Thanvi says, we passed by this hadith in its entirety in the previous chapter, where we said that you are rinsing the mouth and rinsing the nose are done with separate waters. And this hadith was one of the proofs for it. Now you may be wondering, how does this hadith fit into this chapter of used water? What exactly is its purpose in here? So without spending too much time on this point, you will find amongst the fuqaha, I mentioned on this point last week, that there are some who regard the water to be impure. We say the water is pure but not a purifier. So one of the reasons is we say it's pure but it's not a purifier. We don't exactly use this hadith as proof. But those who now come and say that the water become impure, they say one of the reasons they say is because your sins have fallen with that water. So you washed your face and you let that water fall into a basin now, for example. So there was no dirt, impurity on your face, but your sins fell off your face with that water, with each drop of that water. As a result, sins are an impurity, so therefore the water is impure. That's the rationale that those fuqaha use to say that the water is impure. We say no, there are numerous ahadith to counter this, and we have done them, but we put the hadith in here nonetheless. So the sins may fall off from your face and your mouth and everything of the sort, but that does not render the water impure. We will say though that it does not have its purifying capabilities, because otherwise you can have an eternal form of water. Just go stand in a bucket, make wudu, let all the water fall back in the bucket. You just come tomorrow, pick all the water up, and you use it over and over again. So we know it doesn't work that way. You use it once, it's over. That water, you discard it, whatever you want to do with it, but you cannot make another wudu with it anyway. But anyway, the hadith is not really one of our dalail. So like I said, we're not going to be deeming the water impure, even though there are fuqaha who deemed it as being impure. But our fatwa of the madhab is not upon that. So let's move on to hadith number 230. عن الشعبي قال كان أصحاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يدخلون أيديهم الماء قبل أن يغسلوا وهم جنوب. أخرجه ابن أبي شيبة كذا في الفتح وهو حسن أو صحيح على قاعدته. Imam al-Sha'bi rahimahullah, he says that the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, they used to put their hands into the container of water before washing before taking a ghusl while they were in a state of janaba. So in other words, we did touch a previous narration like this here that you found a narration which says, don't put your hand in the container, but rather dish out from there like with a jug and pour that over you if you are in a state of janaba. So we explained it that if there is najasa on your hand, then in that case you don't put it in the water. But as you can see here from this narration, it shows that if there's no najasa on your hand and you're just simply in a state of janaba, then by you putting your hand in that water, that doesn't render the water as being, number one, it doesn't render it musta'mal. Now, when we're talking about putting your hand in the water, we're talking about using your hand to dish water with. So that does not render the water musta'mal. Musta'mal water happens when you remove an impurity. So, for example, you have washed, you've made wudhu, you've made ghusl, that water is musta'mal. Now, for example, let's put it this way, you rinse the glass out. You took a glass from your cupboard, you rinsed it under the tap, you poured that water out. So maybe there was dust in the glass, so you washed it out with that. That water is clean. It's not deemed as being musta'mal. Musta'mal, like I say, is that water which has been used لرفع الحدث, to remove impurity. Impurity in the sense that a state of a minor impurity, meaning you needed to make wudu, or major impurity that you needed to make ghusl. Obviously, if you've washed something impure with it, you've washed some blood, some alcohol, some, whatever the case may be, impurities of that sort, then the water is najis. It's not musta'mal, it's pure najis because there's impurity lying within it. So that's a different topic altogether. But anyway, just to put things in its perspective. So Imam Sha'bi says that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum that he met, they had no problem putting their hand into the container of water when it was clean before they had a ghusl, which showed that being in a state of janaba does not render you as one big impurity. So the minute you touch water, it becomes impure. No. The only time it becomes impure is when you are using it now to wash your body with, to remove the state of janaba. So in any case, Imam Ibn Abi Shayba rahimahullah is the narrator of this hadith, and it's mentioned also in Al-Fath, and which is of Imam Ibn Hajar rahimahullah, and he says that the narration is either Hasan or Sahih according to his criteria. So therefore, whether it's Hasan or it's Sahih, in practical terms, it's an authentic hadith that you can make amal upon. Moving further, he says, وروى البخاري تعليقا أن ابن عمر والبراء بن عازب أدخل يده في الطهور ولم يغسلها ثم توضأ ولم ير ابن عباس بأسا بما ينتضح من غسل الجنابة. Imam Bukhari rahimahullah reports ta'aliqan. What is ta'aliqan? You have the mu'allaq narrations of Imam al-Bukhari. In Sahih al-Bukhari, there are the ahadith that Imam Bukhari narrates, and then he has a number of mu'allaq narrations. The mu'allaqat of Imam al-Bukhari are those ahadith which, for example, he used as his chapter headings. So Imam Bukhari will use a hadith as a chapter heading without quoting so-and-so narrated to me from so-and-so, 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 without chain of narration. He simply just puts it out there. It's reported in a mu'allaq form. Now, the mu'allaqat of Imam Bukhari are also deemed to be authentic. However, you tend to find some people, the modernist type ones, who want to come and say there's weak hadith in Bukhari because they have ignorance with their claims. Then they often attack the mu'allaq narrations of Imam al-Bukhari. But for us, we say all the mu'allaqat of Imam Bukhari rahimahullah are authentic as well. So in one of these mu'allaq narrations, Imam Bukhari rahimahullah reports that Hazrat Abdullah ibn Umar and Hazrat Bara ibn Azib radiyallahu anhuma, they would put their hand in the container of water, walam yaghsilha, and he hadn't washed his hand. Thereafter he would make wudu. So how we would understand this hadith once again is that if you are in a state of either janaba or you're in a state of hadathi asghar, you're in a state where you need wudu, as long as there is nothing impure on your hand, then we say it's good to dish out and wash your hands first. But if you were to put your hand into the container without having washed it, the water does not become impure unless there is impurity on your hand. But now, for example, okay, let's say you vomited. Your hands are clean. You vomited, so a whole mouthful. So your wudu broke. So you came now to make wudu. Your hands are clean. Nothing touched your hands whatsoever. Now you dish your hand. You put your hand and dish out from your container of water, without having washed your hand before wudu. That water is pure. Your wudu is valid. So while we say it is good to wash your hands, we don't say that it causes the water to become impure if you put your hand into the water without having washed it. That's the one part. Then he says also that Hadrat Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma used to not find a problem بما ينتضح من غسل الجنابة, the splashes of water from the when you're having a ghusl from janaba. So what needs to be clarified here? When you are having your ghusl of janaba, the removal of, if there was any impurity on your body, that is washed off first. Before you even begin your ghusl, you remove that impurity from your body. So that is out of the question. It's not that the impure water falling on you. We are talking now, there's no impurity on your body. Now you wash yourself. And obviously, when you're using, whether you're using a shower, whether you're using a bucket, whatever the case may be, water will fall on the tiles or whatever, and it splashes. So it will splash on your clothing, it will splash on your body, etc., etc. So he says, Hadrat Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu used to find no problem with this water because the water is pure, it's not a purifier. So it splashes all over you, all over the floor, all over your clothing. It's neither here nor there. Your clothing is 100% pure. So if we took this water to be impure, like I said, some ulama holding the viewpoint that it's impure. If we took that viewpoint, then by this water splashing, it would be impurities splashing. Thus, that which fell on your clothes would make your clothing impure. That which fell on your body would make your body impure. So, you got there's ramifications to it, which doesn't fit. So therefore, the water is pure, not a purifier. Okay, let's move on to the next narration. Hadith number 232. عن حفص عن العلاء ibn al-Musayyib عن حماد عن إبراهيم, عن is missing over here, عن إبراهيم وهو النخعي عن ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما في الرجل يغتسل من الجنابة فينتضح في إنائه من غسله فقال لا بأس به. أخرجه ابن أبي شيبة. It's ابن شيبة. أبي is missing. ابن أبي شيبة في المصنف. قلت هذا سند على شرط مسلم ولكن إبراهيم لم يسمع من ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما وقد مر غير مرة أن مراسيله صحاح. So Imam Hafs narrates from Imam Ala ibn al-Musayyib from Imam Muhammad ibn Abi Salman, who narrates from Imam Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, who said that Hadrat Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma was asked with regards to a person who makes ghusl from janaba. And فَيَنْتَضِحُ فِي إِنَائِهِ مِنْ غُسْلِهِ. You've got your jug or your bucket of water over here that you're making ghusl from. But now as you are washing yourself, the water splashes off from you, or maybe for example you washed your hair, and the water falls off your hair now, for example, dripping like that off your face, off your body, whatever, into the bucket now again. يَنْتَضِحُ فِي إِنَائِهِ مِنْ غُسْلِهِ. The water that is on your body that you are washing yourself with is now falling off into that clean water which has not been used. فقال لا بأس به. Hazrat Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he said there is no harm in that. The water is 100% pure. So don't get bogged down by thinking the water is impure. The water is impure because the water fell off from me. I'm in a state of najasa, janaba. No, the water is pure. That splashes didn't make any difference to it whatsoever. Like I said, once again, we are not talking about impurity falling off your body with water and now falling into that bucket. If the impurity, let's say for example, while you are making ghusl, now for example, your nose began to bleed. So now while you're washing the blood off you, that blood water falls inside your bucket. That's a different story. Now the water is impure on account of impurity having fallen into the water. So if everything is put in its correct perspective, all of the ahadith fit side by side without any contradictions or problems. Okay, so he says that Imam Ibn Abi Shayba is the narrator of this hadith in his Musannaf. Mulana Zafar Ahmad Tanvi says that this hadith is upon the conditions of Imam Muslim, as far as authenticity is concerned, the only thing is that Imam Ibrahim al-Nakhai did not hear directly from Hazrat Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma. So which means between Imam Ibrahim al-Nakhai and Hazrat Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma is someone that's missing. But he says it's been mentioned more than once that the Mursal narrations of Imam Ibrahim al-Nakhai are authentic. So therefore, like Imam Hassan al-Basri, Imam Ibrahim al-Nakhai, then the senior tabi'in, when they narrate in a mursal form, their mursal narrations are regarded to be authentic. Those who chose to only report from authentic, reliable people, so if they report mursalan, it means they missed the person's name out, but that person is deemed to be authentic because he would not have narrated from him if he deemed him to be weak. So, it works like that. Let's move on to the next one. Hadith number 233 عن أبي مريم إياس بن جعفر عن فلان رجل من الصحابة رضي الله عنهم أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان له منديل أو خرقة يمسح بها وجهه إذا توضأ. رواه النسائي في الكنى بسند صحيح. عمدة القاري. قلت وجهالة الصحابي لا تضر عند الجمهور. Imam Abu Maryam Iyas ibn Ja'far narrates from Fulan. Fulan is obviously not a name. Fulan and Ibn Fulan, so and so, meaning he reports from a particular Sahabi, a man from the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, who said that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to have a mindil. Mindil is like a al-mindil wasikhun, when we do our Medina Arabic course, mindil, which we would translate as a handkerchief, but obviously here it's not a handkerchief, it refers to a towel. Hence why you will find in the books of fiqh at-tamandul, tamandul from the word mindil, which means to dry yourself off with a towel. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam had a mindil or a khirqa. The khirqa is a smaller piece of cloth, which if you were to put it in our terms, it would be probably like a face cloth. Not a face cloth per se, but you understand, a smaller piece of cloth like that. يَمْسَحُ بِهَا وَجْهَهُ إِذَا تَوَضَّأَ. That Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to wipe his face with when he would make wudhu. In other words, after making wudhu, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam would dry his face off with this cloth. Imam Nasai narrates this hadith with an authentic chain in his Kitab al-Kuna. It's mentioned here that the Sahabi being unknown, that doesn't harm the narration according to all of the fuqaha and muhaddithin. The reason is because as-sahabatu kulluhum adul, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum are all reliable and trustworthy. So if we say a Sahabi, and one Sahabi could report from 3 different Sahaba who reported from Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So if we don't know a name of a Sahabi and we know it came from the Sahabi, it's neither here nor there, because he's authentic, whether we know his name or not. We can doubt tabi'een and going downwards, but we do not doubt a single Sahabi. So the fact that it was Fulan, Rajulun min as-Sahaba, whoever this Sahabi was that actually narrated it, him being known, or at least him being unknown, doesn't change the authenticity of this hadith in the least. Okay, I'll read the last hadith and then I'll explain one point. So hadith number 234 عن عائشة رضي الله عنها كانت للنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم خرقة يتنشف بها بعد الوضوء. رواه الترمذي وضعفه وصححه الحاكم. قلت لم يصرح الحاكم في المستدرك بتصحيحه، وإنما أشار إلى ثقة رواته وأقره عليه الذهبي في تلخيصه، وله شاهد صحيح قد مر آنفا. So the last hadith of this chapter, Hadra Aisha radiallahu anha narrates that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to have a khirqa. Khirqa, once again, like we just did in the previous hadith, a cloth. Yatanashafu. Yatanashafu means to dry off. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to have a cloth with which he would dry himself off with after wudu. Now Imam al-Tirmidhi rahimahullah narrates this hadith, and Imam Tirmidhi, the hadith is being weak. I remember this still from the days of reading Tirmidhi. So Imam Tirmidhi reports and he says the chain of narration is not authentic. But Now, Malana Zafar adds on here, he says that in Umrat al-Qari, Imam Badruddin Aini, rahimahullah, he says that Imam Hakim graded it as being authentic. So Malana Zafar now comments, he says that Imam Hakim didn't explicitly say that in his Mustadrak that the hadith is authentic, but rather he indicated to the fact that the narrators are all reliable. So he didn't say هذا حديث صحيح على شرط مسلم ولم يخرجاه as was his normal way, but rather what Imam Hakim said that the narrators all are reliable, authentic people. So if it's calling it 6 or half a dozen, whether he said it in explicit terms that that the narration is authentic, or he said that the narrators are all reliable. If you say it's authentic, it means the narrators are reliable. If you say the narrators are reliable, it means the narration is authentic. So, 6, half a dozen boils down to the same thing at the end of the day. So he says that Imam Hakim pointed out to the fact that the narrators are reliable, and Imam Zahabi agreed with him upon that in his footnotes of the Mustadrak. But Mulana Zafar also adds on, he says, it also, apart from this narration here, it has a shahid, an authentic shahid. A shahid means a supporting narration. The narration we just did previously, which is reported here by Imam Nasai, bisanadin sahih, with an authentic chain. So a mindil or a khirqa. So we established the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam had a cloth with which Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam would dry himself off with after wudu. So that narration, which is authentic, supports this narration. So even if we took the view of Imam al-Tirmidhi that this narration has some weakness in its chain, then that narration of Imam al-Nasai with its authenticity lends strength to this narration, and it raises it ila darajat al-Hasan. It then takes it to the level of being Hasan. So therefore we say that to dry yourself off with a towel after wudu is authentically reported, it is reliable, and it's from the Sunnah too. Now, you may wonder that is that an issue to bring up? It actually is. The reason for this is because you will find amongst the ulama who regarded the narration as being not authentic. So therefore, they said that tamandul, to dry yourself off with a towel after wudu, is not from the Sunnah. So you would find certain parts of the world, you would come across people and they'll have made wudu and they would walk around with their sleeves, etc., rolled up in that manner. Especially, for example, if you are in Makkah and Medina and the Middle East, places like that where it's hot. So you know how it is. Yeah, even if it's in South Africa and we're in summer and we're hitting 37 degrees and you go outside in the sun after you just washed your face, you're not going to be out there in 2-3 minutes and you're going to be dry like a bone. So those ulama who held the narration to be weak, they felt that you shouldn't dry yourself off after wudu, let your limbs dry naturally. So that is where this whole issue of tamandul, why it becomes a fiqhi mas'ala as well on account of this. Those who say, no, you shouldn't do it, but we say we have an authentic hadith and we've got a narration which we say is authentic too, but even if you said it was weak, the authentic one lends strength to it. So at the end of the day, you have an authentic one and you have a Hassan one. So the narration, the mas'ala is thus established that if you were to use a towel after wudu, you would be following the sunnah and there would be nothing wrong with it whatsoever. So that's the end of the chapter with regards to Ma'ul Musta'mal. But anyway, I know the last few ahadith that we touched on here were speaking about other points about using a cloth and everything of the sort. What it also is pointing out is the fact that if you are drying yourself off with a cloth, if the water was najis, if, on account of the fact the sins fall off from your face, but that means the sins are running down your face with the water that's running down you. So therefore, you are now, for example, drying your face off and you're rubbing those sins and that najasa, so to speak, into the cloth. Ergo, the cloth should become impure. But nobody deems the cloth to be impure. So therefore, it lends extra strength to our viewpoint where we say the water that comes off from you is musta'mal, it is pure, not a purifier, but it most definitely is not najis. So therefore, if you would be essentially, you've got a small cloth, so you've dried your face once. So the cloth already becomes wet from that point. Now, when you've dried your one arm, there's not going to be another dry, clean spot on the towel left over. You're going to be using over that point where you just dried yourself off. So if it was impurity, then you would be basically wiping impurity off on you the whole time. So you'd be dirty, you'd be impure if the water was impure by drying yourself off, if you understand what is being said. So therefore we say no. All of these ahadith, it's taken from a roundabout way, but even from that point, you can understand that if Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam had a cloth to dry oneself off with, if Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam did all of these various things as in the ahadith, it shows that the water which falls off from you may not be a purifier, but that doesn't change the fact that it is pure. So therefore, whether it falls on you or in your water or on your clothing or on your towel or whatever, the water is pure and the clothing and everything are all clean as well. And Allah knows best. And let's see, where are we? Okay, the next chapter only got one single hadith, but it's linked to the chapter which follows it. So I think it's better then that we rather stop on this point here, inshallah, and we can resume next week, Thursday, to do this next chapter and the chapter which follows it, and we see how far we go with that as well. But we're done with Ma'ul Musta'mal. Our next chapter will be dealing with tanning of hides, the animal skins, pelts, whatever term you want to refer to it as. We'll be dealing with that next week, inshallah. So that's why I don't want to jump into it right now. So with that being said, we end on this point here for tonight, inshallah ta'ala. Until next time, we end and we say, وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.